So tonight's meditation, I'm going to talk about something that you have heard me talk about in the past, but I am going to talk about um, how I have experienced it in just the past couple days, which for me has been extremely healthy, extremely helpful, um, and has allowed me to think about it in, I guess, new and different ways. And it's also it's helped me to see how helpful this way of thinking is for me. So in the past, you've heard me talk about how the Jesuits think about all of life, how they talk about all of life it's one of two things. It's either gift or it's grace. That every single thing that happens in our lives is a gift. The good, the bad, and the downright ugly, just all of life is a gift from God. And the grace comes whenever in the midst of life, no matter what it is, whether it's a good gift that we have received, whether it's a challenging gift that we have received, or whether it is just an absolute knock you on your back, you don't know if you're going to be able to get up again, gift that you have received from life. The grace comes when the Spirit of God is there and surrounds you and is with you and enables you, empowers you, allows you to move through life, to see the fullness and the completeness of life, to connect with the fullness of who God is in the midst of all of life. So here is one experience that I had this past week. I have a pastor friend of mine who has been going through dialysis. She has been suffering on dialysis for basically as long as I've known her. And I've known her 3 or 4 years. And I called her on Saturday. Or actually, that's not true. I called her yesterday. I called her Monday. And when I called her Monday, I asked her if she was available to have lunch later this week, and she goes, "No, Pastor, I'm not available. I can't be there." I said, "Well, that's okay. We'll get together some other time." And she goes, "Well, Pastor, I need to share with you some news, some good news." And I said, "Well, what's that, Lilith?" And she says, "Pastor, I got a phone call on Saturday that they had a new kidney for me, and I had to rush to the hospital, and I got my kidney." And then she was just, it was really kind of cute. She goes, "Pastor, it's working, it's working, it's working." And so they had given her this kidney transplant on Saturday, and I was talking to her on Monday, and her kidney was working. And so for like 2 or 3 years that I've known her, she's been struggling with dialysis, and she hasn't been able to function as a fully healthy individual. And she has continued to labor on as a pastor and everything, and life has been hard, and she has labored. I mean, that was the gift that God gave her. That was the gift that life had brought her. That was the gift, and God gave her the grace to move through it. And then there's the gift of the new kidney, and there's the grace that she and I got to share to celebrate that new kidney, that new functioning healthy kidney that she has now. And as I got off the phone with her, we shared some time together, we prayed together, and as I got off the phone with her, I went back to, my mind was drawn back to this idea of gift and grace. And I started thinking about her journey and what that meant for her. And I was fully able to be happy and celebrate with Lilith. And I don't know that I would have been able to do that years ago. Years ago, I think my gut reaction would have been, well, why in the world does she get a new kidney and I have to continue on with what I'm going through? That's not fair. It's not fair that she gets this new kidney and I have to continue to suffer. But there was none of that in our conversation. And where what I think that was for me was, Lilith got her gift. The gift was the new kidney, and we can celebrate that. And the gift that I have is, look, I have the gift of this next round of chemotherapy. All of life is gift. Some of it we see as just downright, we can see it right away as a good gift. And some of it we look at and we say, boy, I don't know if I want that gift. But the grace of God is there in the midst of it to help us walk through it, to help us get through the struggle, to help us encounter God in the midst of it, and to share in the gifts that everybody else has. And so when we start to think like that, and we start to see the world like that, the idea of, well, I have to get mine, and I have to make sure that all the gifts are fair, and that all the gifts are equal, or that I get more gifts than anybody else, that kind of falls away, because the reality is that the biggest gift of all is the grace. It's the Spirit of God walking with you through the midst of no matter what life is all about. So that's one experience. The other experience is, I have been, I published the second edition of my book. And when I did that, I sent out to a lot of friends and people that I have built relationships with over the years, and I asked them to share about it through social media or whatever avenues that they have to share that hey, the book is there, it's on Amazon, do what you want with it. And a lot of people have helped with that, and it's been great. It's been really encouraging. But the thing that has come out of that is that the more I share the gift of my struggle and the gift of the hardship that I'm walking through, and the way and the grace with which how God has met me in the midst of it, the more other people share their gifts, all of their struggles, right? It's like, if you go to Facebook and you look at Facebook most of the time is look at me, I'm on this great vacation. Look at me and my family. My kids are excellent. They're doing this phenomenal thing. It's a lot of the all of life is great. All of life is perfect. We don't take a lot of pictures, or we don't share a lot of, hey, life is hard and life is difficult. It's a lot of, hey, look, everything is going up and to the right, and I've got my whole world figured out kind of stuff. But what I have found, and what I've experienced again just in the last 2 weeks, is that the more I share the gift of my struggles, the more that people feel comfortable sharing their struggles, and the more real, honest kind of conversation that you have with people, and it's just so healthy and it's so healing. I've ended up in just offline sidebar conversations through email and social media with just so many people that some of them I have not talked to since I graduated high school. And just, they see stuff and they're aware of stuff, and they hear the sharing, and then we just start a little conversation, and then they say, oh yeah, by the way, this is what I'm dealing with. And you can feel coming through them that there's this, like, I have nowhere else to share this. Nobody else knows this. I can't, but since you've shared this, I'm going to share this with you. And and it just kind of, it's had me thinking about the way that we move through the world and the way that we move through life. And most of the time, we only want to share the good gifts that we've received, right? We only want to talk about how everything is going right and how we've got everything put together and how we're not struggling with anything. And what that does um, is that just kind of, I think it takes away from true relationship, true community, true sharing, and it places upon us, at least it placed upon me, this burden to pretend that everything's great. And so I'm kind of living in a, I'm living in a fake kind of world, because I'm telling you, oh yeah, everything's great. But in reality, I know everything's not great. I know what my struggles are. I know what my hardships are. I know what my difficulties are. But you know what? I can't let you know that. I don't want to let you know that. I don't want to share that with you, whoever you is, for whatever reason. But all of a sudden, when people ask, "Hey, how are you doing?" Um, and you share the truth, and you share the reality of the totality of all of the gifts that you've received, because all of life is gift, and you share all of it with people, all of a sudden everybody else can share the totality, the fullness, the completeness, all of the gifts that they have received. And I think it's there in the midst of that kind of sharing that the grace of God shows up. Um, and deepens our connection with one another, and deepens our connection ultimately with the Spirit of God. And so that's just two experiences I've had in the past week and a half, where this idea of gift and grace, that the Jesuits have, that the way that they look at all of life is either one of two things: it's gift or it's grace. How being able to continuing to learn to view the world that way, it really has the ability to do, I think, what Jesus talked about. When Jesus said, "I have come to set the captives free." I mean, I think it really has the ability to set people free, to set us free, to experience again what Jesus talks about is life to the full. Because you're no longer pretending, you're no longer like under this burden to put this image that everything is all together and everything is perfect and everything is great, because you know what, it's not. You're not fooling anybody, and you're not under any burden to do that. And there's a deepening of relationship with those you share with, those you're in community with, and ultimately a deepening of relationship with God.